when it was over for Shields, as you found out, what led to the next step? Now, I've always been told
Yeah.
that Wrangler had a big part in trying to get both you guys to run, and it sort of led to a Bud Moore, you, and Richard Childress Dale.
I mean, it looked pretty neat from the outside, you know. I mean, Dale and Richard were good buddies. I mean, they were best friends for years. They hunted together, they spent all the time together. And people don't realize it that Dale and we'd come to Charlotte. When I first started coming to Charlotte, when we had our family car, Dale was, you talking about a hard worker. He'd come in his ex-father-in-law shop, Robert G. And his day job, he was welding up gasoline tanker trucks. He's inside of a gasoline tanker truck welding cracks during the day. And he'd come to work at his father-in-law's, ex-father-in-law's house, Robert G's house, at a shop in the backyard. And he'd come in the door and had a bottle of Jack Daniels and a Sun Drop. And he'd sit him on the counter. And he didn't get drunk, but he had 2 or 3 shots of liquor and chased it with Sun Drop. And he was working on my race car. It was a race car that Robert G had sold us, and I'd wrecked it or done something to it. But anyway, Robert ends up, he's in there, and we started knowing each other then. Later on, he, obviously he, made it, won a championship, money started coming. And so we had a friendship that went back there. And then we would come to town. We would stay at his house for Charlotte, I think Rockingham, Wilkesboro. We stay down there, basement, had a bedroom down there. Lynn and I would stay there and stayed at his house there on the lake. And, we at one time we were pretty close. Of course, when that Richard Childress split happened, and we kind of, we had. I think I had more bad blood toward it than he did. But anyway, the Bud Moore thing came along. So basically, I'm out of work, and basically the sponsorship, like you were saying, there was 2 Wrangler cars out there, and it looked really neat. 2 Wrangler, 1 Chevrolet, 1 Ford. And we'd actually have to go to photo shoots and stuff together once a year, and I was interested. But anyway, I think they made him shave his mustache off on one of those deals, and I think he felt naked. He ended up growing it back pretty quick, but they made him do that. I don't know. So it looked like he had 2 clean-cut looking drivers. I'm not sure what their plan was, but that was a sponsor-dictated thing. But yeah, that was kind of a neat deal. I got a chance to drive. It didn't end up totally bad. I ended up getting to drive for the legend of Bud Moore, and experience that operation, and stayed there 3 or 4 years, I think, at Bud's. But that's kind of, it looked neat, the switch, but it was more difficult than it probably appeared. But Wrangler, like you say, they were able to smooth things over, and nobody sued each other, and everything went smooth, but it all worked out pretty good.
At some point, you developed the rooster persona. I don't know if that was with you in the beginning, but it seemed like in the mid 1980s you started taking up for yourself a little bit. I know that Steve loves to tell a story about you and Joe Ruttman at Martinsville. Everybody remembers you and Dale at North Wilkesboro, 88, 89. Was there a specific moment when you flipped that switch, or was that always there and you just didn't have the chance to show it?
Yeah, I don't really feel like I did anything any different. It seemed like as you drive along, and your career lasts as long as mine, it used to be frustrating a lot to, I made it a point to not drive over my head when I was learning. Let it come to me, and I'm sure I made some mistakes. I know I did, and other guys got wrecked because of that. But I remember your patience tends to wear thinner as you go along, and you say, why wouldn't these drivers be a little smarter about that? The silly stuff. I'm not talking about veteran stuff, but silly stuff that people make. Your patience tends to wear thin, and I think because at one time you wouldn't have maybe but 1 NASCAR rookie a year come along, maybe 2 in a season, pretty much. And then all of a sudden you're getting 5 and 10 guys showing up at one time, and it just seemed like we had a lot more wrecks and stuff that were unnecessary. And I don't know if maybe that had something to do with it, but I didn't go looking for trouble. My goal was to take that car on a given day, earn my money, try to win the race. You couldn't win the race, you try to run second, and don't settle for anything, and get that car as high as you can get it. And even if you knew a lot of times that once you start that race, there's no way in the world we're going to see victory lane, but I'm going to race my butt off to get in the top 10. You just did that. But as far as the rooster thing, I think I was driving. That came later, really. The nickname was from Richard Broom, which happened when I owned my car somewhere in the mid-'90s. But, again, didn't look for trouble, didn't want trouble, but sometimes you just had to stand your ground. And if you didn't, you get run over every week. And that's just kind of an unwritten rule. And, and I think back maybe some of the Earnhardt stuff we got into. And hey, I didn't go looking for trouble, but sometimes there's only way to settle is an eye for an eye, and that was kind of the unwritten rule. And believe it or not, people sort of abided by that. And it sounds simple, but it kind of worked in its day. But you couldn't be timid if someone, you can tell if someone's trying to, rough you up or trying to cheap shot you, or it's just a lot of unwritten stuff, code of ethics that happened. Yeah. So I didn't do anything any different than I would. I raced people the way I wanted to be raced. But if you had to get up on the wheel and give a cheap shot back to somebody that deserved it, well, you just had to do what you had to do. You had to make sure it got harder later on because you knew there were so many TV cameras everywhere watching. You had to. I remember short track days, we'd actually take an eye. Where are the cameras at? Where's the blind spots?
Really?
Yeah. I don't think I was by myself. I think there was somebody a lot better at it than I was. He used to drive a 3-car. He knew where the cameras were.
So, 88 and 89 at North Wilkesboro, most everybody knows that story. Did you still have residual, I guess, resentment over the 3-car? Or had that fallen by?
that had long gone over that. That had been long gone. But, basically, Dale was a tough competitor. I always thought he could have won almost as many races without having to take competition out. And he was, to me, he was very good at what he did. He would kind of size up everybody early in the race. And if he seen somebody was going to really be a threat early, he wouldn't wait to the end when the eyes are on. He would make sure he'd rough somebody up a little bit early on, maybe just knock a fender in where that guy lost his arrow. He'd tend to know who his competitors were going to be. He'd run a race backwards. He knew who he had to deal with early. He'd be dealing with them late unless he was able to nick him up a little bit, just wound him a little bit, not necessarily take him out, but wound him or set him back, get him a lap down. And now they're digging out of a hole. He was pretty good at that.
Larry McReynolds likes to tell the story about that 89 race and talking about the fans wanted them some Ricky Rudd. After that race, and you had to hide under a tarp or something.
I went out in Larry Mack's minivan because he used to park in the infield, and we'd always park out on the road where you could get out and get away from the traffic. So yeah, Larry had a minivan, and but you talk about that. I'd say half of that crowd that day, Larry is right, and they were ready to. It was the closest thing I'd ever seen to a riot. And, I don't think they probably had the police control to handle it. It could have gotten nasty. But I seen a lot of green shirts at the fence, cheering on, and I seen a lot of, black shirts at the fence. And it's amazing it wasn't a brawl in the crowd, But saw that on pit road. And, of course, when came down pit road, I think there's 2 incidents that happened at Wilkesboro that I can think of. One race, it wasn't as crazy a finish. The other one happened on the last lap. And that particular day, it was kind of scary. I was, for one time only in my whole racing career to ever think about this could get out of control. And I'm sure NASCAR thought the same thing. But anyway, that whole wreck deal that happened is, I was going to win the race. I mean, I set Dale up late in the race. I had a better car than he had. We had trouble early on. That green car always ran good at Wilkesboro, no matter who drove it. Brett Bodine, I think, won there. But Larry Mack and Bob Riley, they always had a car that was really good there. So we got buried deep in the crowd early on. So late in the race, I finally catch Earnhardt. And I remember catching Dale, and the caution came out with about 10 laps to go. And as soon as I caught him, I just nudged him. Just something different he's not used to. So I remember just touching him. And he looked up in the mirror, and the caution's out. But before the caution came out. So, and I think it got him thinking that day, like, this is gonna be. I'm gonna have my hands full because I ran him down, and then the caution come out. So we get the restart, and I sat there, and I said, I can't. If I pass him with 2 to go, he's gonna wreck me. I won't win the race. So I knew that I had to go down into turn one, go square with him. I wasn't even going to pass him. I was going to stay square with him because I didn't want to let me get out and then turn me. I had to stay door to door with him. So when we hit 3, I was going to be square with him. I already knew all this. I knew how it was going to unfold. What I didn't expect for him to come on down and pinch me all the way down at the bottom, and I couldn't turn any sharper. When I tried to turn, we both spun. He was spinning and I was spinning, and I looking back, there's arguments both ways. He should have held his line. Yet it's still, next to the final corner. He's going to do what he's going to do, and I got to do what I got to do. But I couldn't go any farther. The curve was down there. I had nowhere to go. So anyway, that was that. But the Wilkesboro, I think, prior to that was one that I'll remember that more than that one. That's another story. And I don't even know where we finished that day. He was at Wilkesboro late, about that same time period.
You talking about 88? Yeah.
Might have been 88.
Yeah.
And again, this was early in the race. And I'm not even leading the race at this time. I'm somewhere in the top 5. And all of a sudden, Dale spins me on purpose, turns me around. And now I'm at the back of the pack. I almost lose a lap. Now, short track, it took forever on the green if you have to come back around. You didn't have these give me a position back when a caution comes out. Who's ever in a lap down gets a free lap. You had to race your way back. So it was a job on a short track. So I remember getting all the way back getting back near the front of the pack. And I remember there's Dale right there. And basically I repaid the favor. And he purposely turned me. I purposely turned him. And he does a half spin about like I did, didn't hit the wall. And I come in, the race is over. I think this was near the end. I come into the garage area, pull into the garage stall, and Bill France is standing in my stall when I get there, Bill Jr. He's standing there, he's got his arms crossed, and I said, uh-oh, this is going to be interesting. This spin had happened the later spin didn't happen. It happened where he couldn't dig himself out of a hole. So I basically paid the favor back, but it happened at not a good opportune time for him if he's going to try to win the race. So anyway, I come into the pits, in the stall, everybody's getting out, net gets down, I get out of the car, and Bill's right there like, what was all that? What was all that going on out there? What was that with you in the 3 car? What was that about? I said, oh, you mean when he spun me early in the race, when he turned me around? No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about late in the race when you turned him around. He said, what do you think about that? And he said, what do you have to say? What do you have to say for yourself? And I looked at him. I said, Bill, I'm really disappointed in myself. I really am. And he looked at me like, well, okay. And then I said, I'm disappointed because I didn't run that son of a bitch through the wall. And I think that's when I made my mistake, because the next morning I got a fine. It was a fax machine, $10,000 fine, detrimental conduct, detrimental sport auto race. If I went, my big mouth got me in trouble. If I had just been quiet, it would have saved me $10,000.